Yeah, I just wanted to talk about old manual lenses for Pentax. You hear a lot about them on YouTube, and I've over the years I've been into photography for years, and I'm one of those people, like a lot of people in my generation, whose photography career, so to speak, spans both the film and the digital era. And yeah, my generation made all the mistakes on the way, and we accumulated a whole lot of lenses in our lifetimes. At the very start of the digital SLR era, I embarked on this project of using old manual focus lenses in the 60s on modern digital SLRs using adapters, and yeah, there were twists and turns on the way, until the adapter people worked out how to get infinite focus on their manual focus lenses. There's been all sorts of problems on the way. Well, just glitches. But my lifetime in photography as a hobby is remarkable, because I'm probably one of the cheapest people alive, and I was into old manual focus lenses on digital cameras before it was cool, so to speak. And when I was doing it, all my friends thought I was nuts. Well, I started in like serious photography with an SLR camera back in the early 90s, and back then I only had that was the era of, yeah, there was the Pentax. The Pentax came out, was the sort of like ruled the waves, but before that, in the 60s, the camera format that was really the industry standard, by any measure, was the Pentax screw mount, the 42mm Pentax screw mount, and like on the Spotmatic and the other models, similar models. And back then, well, I traveled around the US in the mid-90s, photographing, just visiting friends and relatives, traveling around the Greyhound, taking shots out the window of the bus, of the mountains in Colorado and that sort of thing. I traveled around the US back in the mid-90s with an old Russian Zenit SLR with 35mm film and just a handful of primes, because, well, I mean, you could buy Pentax SLRs, you could buy Canon and Nikon and all that, but there was still quite a number of screw mount lenses hanging around, because back in the 60s, in the screw mount era, everyone made screw mount cameras and aftermarket screw mount lenses, and there's millions of them around. And yeah, there's millions of them around to this day, and some of them are very good. And that's really part of the motivation of this series of talks, is to help all y'all, well, not waste your time, because yeah, we were just there back in the day, and we did what we did with what we had, and we explored all these different possibilities and backwaters, and found out what works and what doesn't. And that's partly why I want to do this talk, is to save you a bit of time. But anyway, yeah, as I was saying, 1960s, screw mount was king, and Zenith, the Russians, Praktica. I mean, you can find all this stuff on eBay, or any sort of kind of online auction, site. You can Praktica, Zenith. There's Pentax. There's maybe a score of manufacturers made bodies for SLRs with the 42mm screw mount, and everyone made all kinds of screw mount aftermarket lenses for the screw mount. Not least of all Pentax. And I'll give you a hint about what this talk's going to thrust towards. Is my general conclusion that there's so many old screw mount lenses you can buy at county fairs and markets and just local garage sales and things. There's so many old screw mount lenses you can get, and old Pentax K mount lenses you can buy for quite reasonable sums of money, quite small sums of money. Most of them go for almost nothing. But there's also the thing. There's all this other concern of there's a number of things: image quality and just actual mechanical convenience. Because first of all, there's the take Pentax. You can wander around a local market, garage sale, and you come across this grand old Pentax 50mm f1.4 prime lens, which is famous for having the radioactive thorium in the back, and it'll set off a Geiger counter, and but it's a f1.4, and it's a nice fast lens, and it does have image quality. You could never fault it. It's so good. And this is one of the lenses that people say they're better than your kit lens. An old 60s lens, being better than modern kit lens, and it's almost true. For the old f1.4 50mm prime, that's almost true. These because they're so good, and except that there's the yellowish tinge from the radioactive decay of the thorium. But anyway, but that's something you do get. That's one thing you just basically cannot avoid with any old screw mount lens, is they all have character. Whether it's got a yellowish tinge from radioactive decay, or it's got some issues with flare because it doesn't have modern coatings like modern lenses. the thing about say your Russian lenses, which they're still selling on rugift.com, but which are still, you know, for a lot of reasons, damn good for a lot of things. But let me digress briefly to the one lens you'll find in markets and Yarra sales and things all the time is the old Russian Helios 58mm f2 prime. Now, there's a million reviews of these on photography websites, and so let me suffice it to say these they are a fast lens. They are reasonably good. See, back in the day when I was actually traveling around the world with a film SLR and a Russian 58mm, the photos were really good quality, and they were, you know, as far as I was concerned, you know, crystal clear, and they had the nice focus, the nice smooth long throw focus, and they were reasonably fast, and the photos that we got were good, quite good. But what let down your Russian and your Eastern European cameras was the they had a fairly clunky, simple light measuring setup, and a lot of them had just like a little. They had some little dial, and on a lot of them you had to actually have your own separate light meter. But they were going like your handheld light meter was becoming less popular because they had light meters built into the SLR, and they were powered by one of those little dime batteries, and so they were okay. But they were all mechanical, and well, I mean, yeah, there was the Pentaxes and things which had all kinds of electronic drives and that sort of thing. But as I say, didn't have the money for all that in my youth, and so I had an old clunky mechanical hand-operated, hand-wound film SLR. Now, basically there's one thing you do get with, say, old screw mount lenses on Pentax or whatever you're going to. These days you can buy adapters for anything, Canon or anything. But one thing you do get with like old Russian lenses, for example, is character. Back in the day, they looked like just photos to us, and like nice photos. But these days, what you notice is character. The photos you take with your digital SLR just look like photos from the 70s. Yeah, anyone who grew up in the 70s knows that that's when everyone started printing out their photos in colour, having colour prints, and so everyone had colour prints of, you know, themselves on the lawn in a party dress and that sort of thing, and they were cute, but it's really 70s, and that's the feel you get, even with Russian lenses. Carl Zeiss Jena, Pentacon, a Meyer optic, Meyer Gorlitz optic, whatever it's called. they all have this early 70s look to them, because basically, yeah, photography, I mean, science has been advancing at an amazing rate for the past, past couple of decades, especially photography, and the quality of modern lenses, even like your modern kit zoom, they're just out of this world. I mean, the quality of photos you get from just like your kit, 18 to 55, say, zoom on a Pentax or something, it's just, the quality is so good. And it's just, yeah, it's got to the point where they've got the science so advanced that the photos are boring. They're almost boring. Because a modern kit lens has a very affordable lens with lots of modern coatings, and they have the aspheric elements, which completely almost eliminate any kind of barrel distortion from your photos, even on the widest angles. And I mean, they've got the science down to such a marvelously good level, even in just the cheapest lenses, they're so good they're almost boring, and that's one thing why people go to your old screw mount lenses, is for the character. And that's one big thing you do get with screw mount lenses, is character. For example, this is the f2.8 Carl Zeiss Sienna 35mm Flectagon, which is the object of great envy with a lot of people. Now this is a 60s Flectagon, and which I picked up in a bunch of stuff I got. But this is one thing that does highlight some of the problems with your older lenses, is just their mechanical compatibility. I mean, they've all got the 42mm screw, and they've got the little pin to operate the aperture, but like the Pentax digital SLRs do not have any kind of mechanical means for manipulating the pin to internally manipulating the pin to modify the aperture. So even with Takumars, even with all your Takumars, 50mm, anything, 135mm, they all have, you have to use the dongle, which sets from A, which puts it on, which was automatic, which was used in the old days, used to mean the camera itself could modify the aperture when you press the button. But by the way, that the Pentax, this is common to all Pentax Takumars of that era, is they had the switch which went from A to, was it F or something, but that to manual to auto, yeah. Now that's the only thing you have to use that. If you're using like Takumars on a digital SLR, you need to basically preset the aperture, and the camera has to meter the light as it is, as it's coming from the aperture with it already set, because all you do with these things is you focus manually and you set your aperture with the ring and you press the button, and you can they're really good these days, but the camera goes and just calculates what exposure it's going to need, given on the lights, the state of it is. But there's no communication between the camera and your old screw-mount lenses. Well, we're going back to Carl Zeiss Jena and Pentacon and Mara Gorlitz Optics and other guys, and even a lot Japanese aftermarket people. They didn't have that switch, or they got some other setup to modify the aperture. So this one has this little button. So in the old days, when you were just measuring the light for a shot, you would squeeze it and set the aperture, and then you would test the light and set your speed and everything for the light, and then you'd go and take the shot. And the old mechanical camera would do the aperture with this pin, which they don't do these days. So the only way of changing the aperture when you're using this on a digital SLR is to squeeze this stupid button, which isn't very convenient. It's like digs into your fingers because it's not very big. But I mean, Flectagon, yeah, people will rave about the optical quality of Carl Zeiss Jena, yakety yak, and they are good. I mean, it's got some nice qualities, but it's hard to use, and it does have basically character. It has I don't think these Germans were big on lens coatings back then, and there's too, like the Pentacon 50mm 1.8, which is highly regarded lens. It's got the same thing. You have to press this button on the side to change the aperture when you're testing the light for a shot. And there's no means of like manually setting the aperture and just leaving it there and blazing away with the camera. You've got to hold this button down, and that's kind of inconvenient because you're trying to use your hands for other things too, like focus and whatever. So yeah, especially a lot of the East German lenses have these sorts of issues. I'm not. Their optical quality is, as a rule, quite good. The Russian stuff, even like East German stuff, it has character, and that means it looks like a photo from the '60s, and there's things to be desired. They have flare, they have ghosting and flare, and you definitely need a lens hood, and so you're going to need your Pentax 49mm lens hoods, and yeah, so they certainly have character, and that's what people buy them, and that's why people like them. But because they have pitfalls, like sometimes they're mechanically incompatible with your actually new cameras. I mean, like this guy once was this Vivitar f2 28mm which I had to modify it with a hacksaw some years ago just to get this collar to actually fit into my SLR. There's a lot of mechanical compatibility issues with old screw mount lenses. Well, this is an old K-mount, by the way, but there can be pitfalls, and usually people go, well, pitfalls, who cares? Yeah, well, the thing is, you see, but like, there are, I mean, you can have a lot of fun. Because, I mean, you can say, well, damn the torpedoes, I'm going to buy cheap lenses at the markets and just see how I go. And honestly, most of the time, you'll be pleasantly surprised. I mean, this is an old Tamron. I got this 300mm Tamron Prime. It's an f3.5 or something, but it's nice. And it's nice, and it works well, and it's good for photographing birdies. And it does have issues. I mean, you can go pixel peeping and find real chromatic aberration and that sort of thing. But I got this for $10 at the local markets, which is a good score. Now there's the Pentax, comparable Pentax 300mm f4 job, which on eBay or something you pay hundreds and hundreds, and that's part of the rub. Is there are some screw mount lenses that are highly sought after and quite expensive, which are as a rule like very good, but there's the pitfalls, as I've mentioned before, that you ought to keep in mind is yeah, I wouldn't spend a lot of money until, well, I mean, there's spending a lot of money. That's, as a rule, not advised. I mean, you can get. I spent $50 this on. I travelled across town, and this is a Ricoh K-mount f2 50mm prime that I wanted for shooting video on a digital SLR, and yeah, it's nice. Ricoh had a good reputation. Yeah, I don't have any complaints about image quality. But that's K-mount, bayonet mount era, and they had their coatings sorted out, and they were getting on to being quite good lenses. But yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, for Pentax, a K-mount, as a rule, you probably can't go wrong with a K-mount Pentax original. And to keep in mind, they may not be. I mean, just some people just assume they're going to be autofocus or something. But yeah, yeah. I mean, there's as far as screw mount goes, there's these there's this sort of thing. There's some quite good Japanese aftermarket people like Komuranon, who made these zooms, all metal construction, smooth. I mean, it's like a, yeah, it's like a, yeah, it's heavy and solid and just really nice. I've taken some really nice photos with this, but this is something I picked up for $30, and a screw mount zoom, and yeah, one of those small aftermarket Japanese companies that were really good. But they're a variable in quality. I mean, you get some of the Japanese stuff was just was good, and some of them was sort of junky. And well, it's, I wouldn't say. That's Fontron, which is pretty nice. Yeah. This is the classic 135mm f3.5 prime that you can get quite affordably on eBay and that sort of thing, and these are just Pentax. Yeah, I Pentax Takumar. Yeah, buy. Don't hesitate to buy these. They do have fungus. Some of them have dust and fungus, and learning how to clean them, take apart these things and clean them is quite a journey, and involves having or making up special tools and having some knowledge about optics and things. So taking these things apart and cleaning them can be an interesting challenge, but even with just a light bit of fungus, you can, like on the back or the front, you clean them up with methylated spirits quite easily, and they're just like, you never notice that there might be a tiny bit of residual, but you never notice it. And these take really nice photos. And yeah, Takumars, I can't. Yeah, buy without hesitation. Don't pay too much, especially if they're damaged. But I mean, you like this. This is the Pentax 200mm f3.5. It's f4 actually. Fixed length prime, and these are. I mean, for just putting on your camera, walk around the back garden, photographing birds, even filming birds with these guys, it's just a pleasure. Just got this all metal construction. It's, yeah, as they say, smooth, this butter smooth focus, long throw focus. Yeah. They're, and the photos have this sort of, the photos turn out just really good. And the thing about the Pentaxes, Takumars, is of all the lenses, screw mount lenses I have, these are less likely to be quirky and have atmosphere. These are more up there with your these are just take nice sharp photos that don't they're not as quirky and unpredictable as the other lenses I've had. Now, yeah, I mean, there'd be people on the internet who'd flame you alive with all kinds of actual scientific data about lens resolution, Zeiss versus, yeah, and there are, yeah, I mean, a screw mount lens, you know, Zeiss Jana's good, but if you see something like even Pentax, you know, going cheap at the markets, even something exotic like a Zeiss T-style lens, with K-mount, which are very rare now, but I don't think they make them anymore. But even you can see like Schneider Kreuznach or a Raleigh lens. I'm not sure how many. I've hunted around, and apparently they used to make them. Zeiss and Raleigh and Schneider Kreuznach used to make a lot of M42 screw mount lenses, but they're quite rare. But if you see them in good nick, I mean, yeah, bear any burden, pay any price. But no, I mean, don't go crazy. But yeah, they're but yeah, a lot of people will tell you that, yeah, as I say, if you see Pentax, you know, if you want to start out in manual focus lenses and avoid a lot of the traps and problems, yeah, don't go past Pentax. You know, I'm a Pentax guy. I've had Pentax for decades, and you know, Nikon, Canon, Olympus. I don't know much about them at all. I've had the odd one now and then, but mount compatibility, camera metering, yeah, all that sort of thing. That's beyond me. But there is this. But the M42 screw mount does have a universality now, because there's all kinds of adapters for M42 to Canon, Nikon, everything. So yeah, and you'll see hundreds of guys on YouTube using Pentax Tacomars on Canon bodies. Which says a lot, but yeah, this is that's what you get. So all steel construction. This is a 50mm f1.8. But yeah, you get the nice all steel construction, long throw focus. Yeah. It's a steel lens, I think. It could be aluminium, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you want as few surprises as possible, stick with Pentax. But yeah, if you if you want to, if you, I mean, they're not expensive, but if you've got enough money to go around accumulating a big collection of these things, like I have over the years. But well, don't hesitate, have fun, play around. But yeah, keep in mind the potential pitfalls.